not sure. I don't buy for a minute that he's going to prison without getting out of here somewhere and stashing $2 billion or whatever. I think he has that kind of power, meaning Sean himself. But remember, it goes a lot deeper than that.
You know, there's a short life in
Why do you think that is, what the creative side is?
Well, because losing out money, you got to take. You're going through so much to try and deal with life.
Terrence Howard's revelations about his encounters with Diddy have ignited a storm of speculation, casting a harsh spotlight on the darker corners of Hollywood's glittering facade. Let's not sugarcoat this. Terrence didn't just tell a story, he set off a bomb, and the fallout has everyone scrambling. Diddy, the once untouchable cultural mogul, has found himself at the center of allegations so bizarre, so unsettling they sound like something out of a surrealist crime novel. But this isn't fiction. This is the entertainment industry's underbelly, peeled back for the world to see, and Terrence Howard is holding the scalpel.
Card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying.
Let's start with the heart of it. The accusation that Diddy invited Terrence into his orbit under the guise of camaraderie and professional interest, only to reveal intentions that were anything but. According to Terrence, it wasn't about music or acting, it was about control, about testing the boundaries of integrity and masculinity. Diddy's parties, often whispered about in industry circles, have long carried a reputation for their exclusivity and excess. But Terrence painted a picture that goes far beyond the usual tales of lavish gatherings. He described them as a vortex, a place where boundaries blurred, where power dynamics shifted, and where, in his words, some of the biggest names in Hollywood gave up their man card for the sake of staying in the circle.
That was all the people that went to the Puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Got punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man. So I believe that's a big problem with a lot of the actors out there because they get fluid. And next thing you know, once you go fluid,
This isn't just a story about one man's discomfort. It's a story about what happens when power is wielded without accountability. Terrence didn't mince words when he described the psychological toll that came with merely brushing up against this world. He claimed that once someone crossed a certain line, there was no coming back. You could see it, he said, in their eyes, in their actions, in their struggles to cope. Many of the names tied to Diddy's infamous gatherings, some whispered, some hinted, are facing their own battles today. And Terrence, for his part, made it clear that he narrowly escaped the same fate.
No, I get it. So you see some guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head.
What makes this even more compelling is the way Terrence connected his personal experience to a broader critique of the entertainment industry. He didn't just point fingers at Diddy. He called out the entire system, the enablers, the silent bystanders, the industry insiders who turned a blind eye to behavior that he described as nothing short of predatory. He spoke about actors and artists who traded their values for roles, for deals, for fleeting relevance. And he didn't stop there. He questioned the very fabric of fame, asking what it truly means to achieve success if, in the process, you lose your integrity.
Look at Diddy, for instance. Let's take a look at him. Let's take a look at, he has videos. He has videos of the parties. Now, what I've heard, which I don't know how much of it is in mainstream media, I don't really follow the story that much, but what I've heard from friends that are attorneys, friends of mine that have represented me before, agents and so on, is there's a bidding war going on.
And then there's the involvement of 50 Cent, the master of turning scandal into spectacle. Known for his unfiltered commentary and unflinching willingness to expose, 50 has been dropping cryptic hints that suggest he knows a lot more than he's letting on. His social media posts, often accompanied by ominous captions like, "No comment," or "God help us all," have only added fuel to the fire. And now, with plans to release a docuseries that promises to blow this thing wide open, he's positioned himself as both a whistleblower and a provocateur. But here's the twist. 50 Cent isn't just airing dirty laundry for the sake of drama. He's framing this as a moral crusade, a way to shine a light on the injustices faced by black men in Hollywood who are often forced into compromising situations just to stay afloat.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at it.
And then there's Terrence's own story, a labyrinth of missed opportunities and near misses that reveal just how high the stakes are. He recounted how his assistant warned him about Diddy's intentions, how he abruptly cut off communication, and how he's since lost countless business opportunities because he refused to play along. According to Terrence, this wasn't just about one man's ambitions. This was about a culture, a pattern, a system designed to test how far someone was willing to go for access and success.
To not be involved with a famous singer, to not come out, here's the price. And that they're just selling to the individuals that are in those. This is what I heard. They're selling those videos. So if you're Tommy X, and Tommy X is a big, big movie star, and he was at some of the Diddy parties. He was in one of those bedrooms with 3 other men, and he's happily married to a woman, and blah. Tommy doesn't want that video to come out.
The entertainment world, for all its glitzy red carpets and multi-million-dollar deals, has always had an undercurrent of secrecy, a whispered acknowledgement that what happens behind closed doors stays there. But Terrence's candidness is forcing a reckoning. He detailed how some actors and artists turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms to drown out the memories of what they'd endured. He described how fame, once seen as the ultimate prize, became a gilded cage for those who lost sight of who they were. And he didn't shy away from naming names, or at least strongly hinting at them. From Justin Bieber to unnamed industry icons, the implications are clear. No one is immune.
Now you know to be hands-off with somebody. A number of producers come in to make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you like, or looking at you like you're a woman. You know, when you approach a real man about his masculinity, you're going to get a real reaction back. It's a difference when a guy walks in a room and when a man walks into a room. And a man don't take the same things that a guy will accept.
This brings us to the broader question of integrity. Terrence laid it bare. What good is it to achieve accolades, wealth, and fame if you have to sacrifice your principles to get there? He spoke about the actors who traded their dignity for awards, who signed away their self-respect for a shot at the spotlight, and he made it personal, admitting that he's had to make sacrifices of his own. But, unlike those who caved, he drew a line in the sand. He refused to compromise, even when it meant walking away from lucrative opportunities. And let's not forget the ripple effect. Terrence's revelations have sparked a wave of speculation about who else might have been caught up in Diddy's orbit. Rumors are swirling, names are being whispered, and the entertainment industry is bracing for impact. The timing couldn't be more critical, with 50 Cent's upcoming docuseries threatening to expose even more secrets. The anticipation is palpable, and the stakes are higher than ever. After all, this isn't just about Diddy. This is about a culture of silence and complicity that has allowed behavior like this to go unchecked for far too long.
I've lost businesses because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that because the man card means everything.
But just when you think the story has reached its peak, more layers begin to unravel. Terrence's public statements have opened the floodgates, prompting others to come forward with their own accounts. And while some have chosen to remain anonymous, the details they've shared paint a picture that's both harrowing and eye-opening. From cryptic messages to veiled threats, the narrative is spiraling into territory that feels almost too surreal to believe. Yet, here we are. The entertainment industry has always been a place where image is everything, where reputations can be built and destroyed in an instant. But as these allegations come to light, it's clear that we're entering a new era, one where the truth, no matter how messy or uncomfortable, can no longer be ignored. Terrence Howard's decision to speak out is just the beginning. The question now is, who's next?
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge iconic, TV star or movie star, and you're in some very, very...
And just when you think the chaos couldn't spiral any further, Terrence Howard's story takes a turn so sharp it leaves you questioning everything. While he managed to pull himself out of Diddy's gravitational pull largely unscathed, his revelations have painted a target on the backs of others who weren't so lucky. What's unfolding now isn't just about one man's resistance to a toxic culture. It's about the ripple effect, the collateral damage, the names whispered in hushed tones that are slowly finding their way into the headlines. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. If this is what Terrence is willing to say out loud, what on earth is being left unsaid?
It was just an escape for me. I was just young, you know, like everybody in the industry and people in the world who experiment and do.
The industry response, or more accurately, the lack of it, has been deafening. The silence from other major players, many of whom were regular fixtures at Diddy's infamous gatherings, is as telling as it is chilling. Where are the denials, the rebuttals, the lawsuits? Instead, what we're seeing is a collective retreat, a sudden vanishing act by those who might have too much to lose if they even acknowledge the storm brewing around them. And that silence frankly speaks volumes, because in Hollywood, when people stop talking, it's not because there's nothing to say. It's because saying anything might open a door they've spent decades trying to keep locked. Meanwhile, Diddy himself has remained conspicuously quiet, a stark contrast to his usual larger-than-life persona. This is a man who once reveled in the spotlight, who built an empire on charisma and presence, who thrived on being the loudest voice in the room. And yet now, nothing, no statements, no clarifications, just an eerie, unsettling vacuum where his voice used to be. It's almost as if he's waiting for what, though no one can say. Perhaps he's counting on the industry's notoriously short memory, hoping that this will all blow over if he just keeps his head down long enough. But with 50 Cent's upcoming docuseries hanging over his head like a guillotine, that strategy feels more like a gamble than a plan.
It's getting hot.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Another layer to this story, Anne-Marie. A federal investigation into Combs has been ongoing, but he has not been charged with a crime.
And let's talk about that docuseries for a moment, because it's shaping up to be nothing short of explosive. 50 Cent has made it clear that he's not holding back, teasing that the series will expose not just Diddy, but an entire network of enablers and participants. The sheer scope of what he's hinting at is staggering. We're not just talking about a handful of bad decisions or questionable parties. We're talking about a culture, a system, an entire ecosystem of influence and exploitation. And while 50 Cent has always been a master of self-promotion, his track record for delivering on his promises is hard to ignore. If he says he's got the receipts, you'd better believe people are scrambling to figure out just how damning they might be.
And we are getting word that that these accusers could soon testify in front of a grand jury in New York, and that one accuser is from Detroit.
But here's where things get really messy. Because as much as this scandal is centered on Diddy, it's dragging others into the spotlight in ways no one could have anticipated. Take Justin Bieber, for instance. His name has been swirling around this narrative like a storm cloud, with past interviews and resurfaced clips painting a picture that's hard to ignore. The footage from his teenage years, where Diddy is seen lavishing him with gifts and attention, has taken on a dark, almost sinister undertone in light of recent allegations. At the time, it might have seemed like harmless mentorship, the kind of relationship that often forms between young talent and established moguls. But now it feels loaded, like a piece of a puzzle that no one wants to finish putting together.
This morning, rap mogul Jay-Z is denying allegations he assaulted a 13-year-old girl alongside rapper Sean Diddy Combs. That civil lawsuit filed against Combs in October was amended Sunday to include Jay-Z. The accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, says she was assaulted by both men.
And Bieber isn't the only one. There are whispers about other artists, other actors, other public figures who found themselves drawn into Diddy's orbit, only to emerge years later with scars they're still trying to hide. Some have spoken out in vague terms, hinting at experiences they're not ready to fully articulate. Others have stayed silent, their refusal to comment raising more questions than answers. And then there are those who seem to be in denial, clinging to the idea that if they just keep their heads down, they can ride out the storm. But as the saying goes, the truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, it's rarely on anyone's terms but its own. Even Jay-Z, a figure so towering and untouchable that he's often considered above the fray, has found himself pulled into the narrative. His past ties to Diddy, once a source of mutual respect and admiration, are now being scrutinized under a microscope. The resurfaced clips of Diddy calling him family, the anecdotes about their close bond, all of it is being reevaluated in light of the current scandal. And while Jay-Z has been quick to downplay their relationship, the optics are hard to ignore. Because if someone as powerful and calculated as Jay-Z is suddenly distancing himself, what does that say about what's really going on behind the scenes?
I want to start with just the statement from Jay-Z, which is so forceful in its denial. I just read a teeny part of it, it's long, where he says that they should file a criminal complaint. Is that even possible at this point?
But there's another layer to this that no one seems to be addressing: the financial stakes. Diddy's empire isn't just built on cultural influence, it's a web of business ventures, partnerships, and investments that rely heavily on his public image. From luxury brands to entertainment networks, his name carries weight, and that weight translates directly into profits. The more these allegations spread, the more those partnerships are at risk. Already, whispers are emerging from insiders claiming that some of Diddy's biggest corporate allies are quietly reevaluating their ties to him, weighing whether the bad press is worth the association. The irony here is thick. This is a man who built his brand on being untouchable, and now that very brand might be what brings him down.
Now, he, of course, is more than annoyed, would be an understatement.
Yeah.
He has a family and he has a lot to protect, including his brand. But to the extent that he's saying, hey, come after me criminally, that could be likely. Why do I say that? Because in New York, and what's alleged in this complaint is forcible compulsion. What that means in English is that it's saying that he held her down.
And then there's the question of loyalty, or rather, the lack of it. Over the years, Diddy has surrounded himself with a rotating cast of artists, collaborators, and protégés, many of whom went on to achieve their own success. But while he's often credited with discovering talent, the list of former allies who've spoken out against him is growing. Some have accused him of controlling behavior, of taking more than he ever gave back, of creating an environment where loyalty was expected but rarely reciprocated. And now, as this scandal unfolds, that history is coming back to haunt him. People are starting to connect the dots, to see the patterns, and to question whether Diddy's empire was ever as solid as it seemed. Yet, for all the cracks appearing in his facade, there's a certain resilience to Diddy that can't be ignored. This is a man who's weathered countless storms, who's faced lawsuits, controversies, and public backlash before, only to emerge seemingly unscathed. But this time feels different. This time the allegations are more serious, the evidence harder to dismiss, the voices louder. The question isn't just whether Diddy can survive this, it's whether the industry that enabled him for so long can survive the scrutiny that's now being turned on it. Because if Diddy falls, he's not going alone. The house of cards he helped build is starting to shake, and when it collapses, it's going to take more than one man with it.
Respect to the evidentiary value, yes, it happened 24 years ago, right? More than 24 years ago. But in the allegations, there's a few things. Number one, there's allegation that another celebrity was present at the time, right? In addition to other people. Number two, there's the claim by the victim, right? That she left, that she went and she was seen by a gas attendant who saw her in.
And let's not forget about the legal angle, because this isn't just a matter of public opinion. It's a ticking time bomb in the courtroom. Between the lawsuits, the investigations, and the potential for criminal charges, the stakes couldn't be higher. And with more accusers coming forward, the narrative is shifting from one man's allegations to a broader reckoning. This isn't just about Diddy anymore. This is about an entire industry that has allowed this kind of behavior to fester unchecked for far too long. And the question everyone's asking is, how deep does this go? What makes this even more unsettling is the role of power and influence in shaping the narrative. Diddy isn't just a figurehead. He's an institution, a brand, a symbol of success that's been carefully cultivated over decades. His reach extends far beyond music, touching everything from fashion to philanthropy to media. And that kind of power doesn't just disappear overnight. It fights back, it deflects, it obfuscates. And yet, for all his resources, for all his connections, Diddy is finding himself increasingly isolated, his once untouchable empire beginning to show cracks.
And there has been a lot going on. Since November, there have been 8 civil lawsuits filed against Diddy. 7 of them accuse him of assault.
And as the walls close in, the ripple effects are starting to be felt across the industry. Agents, managers, publicists, everyone is scrambling to protect their clients, their reputations, their livelihoods. The whispers are turning into full-blown panic, with some insiders reportedly rushing to distance themselves from Diddy and others quietly preparing for the fallout. It's a game of survival now, and in Hollywood that game is never played fair. So where does this leave us? What's the end game here? Because as much as we'd like to believe that justice will prevail, the reality is never that simple. The entertainment industry has a long history of burying scandals, of sweeping dirt under the rug and pretending it never existed. But this time, something feels different. This time, the voices are louder, the evidence harder to ignore, the stakes higher than ever. And as more names come to light, as more stories are told, it's becoming clear that this isn't just a scandal, it's a reckoning. But here's the real question. How far will this go before the truth finally comes out? Will Diddy's empire crumble under the weight of these allegations? Or will he find a way to rewrite the narrative once again? And what about the others? The silent participants, the enablers, the ones who stood by and let it happen? Because make no mistake, this isn't just about one man. This is about a culture, a system, a way of doing business that's been allowed to thrive in the shadows for far too long. So what do you think? Are we on the brink of real change? Or is this just another scandal destined to fade away? Let us know your thoughts down below, and as always, stay tuned, because this story is far from over.